What's something that people glamorize but it's actually just extremely toxic? Came here to say this. The core error, IMO, is that all of the stalking and demonstrations of love etc. make sense because the characters just know that he/she is the one. If you were magically granted 100%, infallible clarity that this one person was your soulmate, then all kinds of weird behaviors would make sense. But since that's not the world we live in, it creates a toxic and absurd set of expectations of what one will do to demonstrate true love. Realistically, a lot, but not an infinite amount. At some point, you just say, well, time to move on. By you I mean normal, well-adjusted humans. Not me. There was a trend some years ago, maybe it's still happening, where girls would set up a hidden camera and then tell their boyfriends they were pregnant, just to see the reaction. The only good one of these was when a dude immediately started crying and accusing her of cheating on him because he was sterile and could never have children. Watching her frantically trying to backpedal was a thing of beauty. He knew she was pranking him and decided to get his own back. Kudos to this guy for thinking on his feet. Edit, rip my inbox. And thanks for the silver. I did a quick search on the YouTubes for the exact video I'm thinking of, and I found a daunting number of them, so I did not find it. But my god, how many of these? I realize at least some of them are staged, which does make me feel better about it. But as at least one commenter replied, they spawn copycats which may be genuine, and I feel horrible for those. Great way of putting it. I love pranking my co-workers, but I have ground rules, nothing that will cost money to fix, nothing destructive, and if there's cleanup involved, I always help. It's also about knowing your audience, gotta know the target will be good-natured about it, and if you can't handle a prank being done against you, you shouldn't be doing it to anyone else. I once stole all the wheels from a guy's desk chair and hid them around the office, then left a drawing of Jigsaw on his whiteboard with clues to find them. He retaliated by replacing my desk with table half the size of the desk. It was fantastic. My best friend's wife once told me, I never worry about him cheating, if he's up at all hours talking on the phone, it is always you or your brother talking about college football. Did you see the big post I made about the double wishbone suspensio? Funny you should mention that. I did call him once to brag when a legendary coach replied to a post, complimenting my explanation on the creation of the wishbone offense in football, and then expounding on it as only he could. For about 5 minutes there, I was kind of a big. The whole concept of testing relationships is so stupid. One of my friend was eloping because she wanted to move to her partner's country, and it was easier if they were married, and around that period I was very unemployed and didn't have access to social security, so it was an extremely stressful period for me where I was looking for a job most of the time and also couldn't offer any type of hangout plans that would involve any spending. And I was also deeply depressed. So she assumed I didn't care for her wedding, that was very explicitly more of a contract signing with a small party, and decided not invite me because I wasn't excited enough for her. I learned from another friend that she gave me one last chance to prove my worth to be invited to her post-allotment party. She texted me out of the blue to know if I knew where to buy bow ties. No context, no nothing, just do you know where one could buy bow ties? I said I knew someone who used to make them, but I was pretty sure they closed shop, and just like that, I failed the test to be invited to her party and she ended up writing out of her life. To add on to this, being autistic. Not all autistic people are like the Wolf of Wall Street. In fact, for a large percentage of us, those special interests are either just that, an interest, or practically useless in the real world. And for some people on the spectrum, they never find their special interest. Also, stop thinking we don't have emotions. We just show them differently, and have to think a bit more before we respond because we try super hard not to offend and make sure we have an appropriate response to the situation. I only have one thing I tell people when they get engaged: don't get alone. Every time they've laughed in my face, but then, 6 months down the line I can see they're deep in the fog and think 3 grand on an expense for one day isn't such a bad deal. It has to be perfect. Don't start your marriage in debt for the wedding. Edit: people are getting confused. I mean 3K for a single item contributing to the total wedding cost, not 3K for the wedding itself. Exactly, and it is so annoying when people don't realize that, or even glorify/justify that behavior in a partner, or even worse, seek it. Calling 20 times when you go grocery shopping with a friend is not caring, that is controlling. Telling you what to wear, who to go out with, what you can/can't do is not sweet, it's abusive. Verbally and/or physically attacking you and hurting you is not them losing their temper because they love you too much that it hurts them, it is being abusive, and attacking you and your boundaries. I am just repulsed by it in general and loathe how those are portrayed as obstacles that every relationship has, and partners need to learn to deal with it, otherwise they are not accepting. It's disgusting. Not to mention the damage it does to young people who just start dating and are scared because they accepted that as normalcy. The desperate stupid gesture is a big part of this: show up and disrupt the wedding. Stand outside their window blaring music. Approaching them in an inopportune moment to declare your love, like in the middle of a meeting or speech or other very public event. This is pushed as the way to win her over. They literally glamorize stalking behavior as romantic. Confession time. In my youth I bought into the you can win them over and had many an awkward friend zone experience. It was not fun for them or myself. I stayed friends with them for the sole reason that I bought the your friend will come around thing from the movies. I actually had a similar thing to this just recently, though the outcome was definitely different. I wanted to go camping with some friends. It's something that I haven't done since I was young enough to not even really remember it. I put in a notice for the time off 3 months in advance, and about a month before it happened, I was told that I couldn't have it because I didn't say something early enough and that it was too much time off. I told them it was total bull and that if they don't give me the time off then I just wouldn't show up. They threatened to fire me then and there, so I spent a few days looking for a different job. I'm now at a much more laid-back, respectful job that actually seems to care, more than before at least, about its employees. I feel like the second you say I haven't spent a Thanksgiving with my family in 11 years, something in your brain should go, what am I doing with my life? This kind of stuff is why the US needs better worker protections laws. It's way too easy currently for an employer to encourage, read as force, unhealthy working habits. Just look at crunch for an example. Meanwhile, in my country, France, I am being hounded by my managers because I only took 10 days of paid leave, and that's not enough. And when I tell them I just spent a month and a half in sick leave, they tell me that sick leave isn't vacations. They care about our well-being because they know people work a lot better when they are rested. This kind of stuff should be a standard. Totally. I have a co-worker who brags about how she's always in the office until 8 in the evening and works so much overtime, and I'm just like, why the fuck would you do that? In her position there is no ladder to climb. She even takes her laptop on vacation to work when she's on vacation, and I just don't get it. Where she is in the hierarchy means that she is basically a mid-level administrative employee, probably making around 36-40K per year, and the prospects for career advancement, within the organization, are almost non-existent. I just want to tell her one day, hey, you're not getting paid enough for this. It's also a cheap way out of growing yourself. I like be the person you want to be much more than be yourself. It recognizes that yeah, we each have our own shortcomings, and we shouldn't just accept every single bad trait, but at the same time, we can also accept ourselves knowing that we're taking steps towards improvement. Especially when it comes to dating, you often get the advice that hey, just be yourself and talk to her/him. That isn't really helpful if someone's self is an awkward, Nervous wreck. I think that telling someone to just accept who they are and their feelings in the moment is far better advice, because it recognizes the problem, and the fact that it's natural to be a bit on edge in that situation. Edit. Hey fellas, appreciate the awards. It seems my comments resonated with some of you, so I hope it was at least somewhat helpful. It's hardly ever presented in most media they consume accurately. Depression is just someone having a hard time getting out of bed. They don't see the other, less sexy symptoms. Anxiety is seen as cute and quirky, not the irrational thinking patterns. Those aren't cute. Bipolar is portrayed as allowing someone to have those fleeting moments of great creativity, not the destructive mania followed by the crashing depression. Media makers know if they portrayed mental illness accurately, no one would want to consume it. They hardly get to actually see the real issue unless their close family, close friends, or themselves have a mental illness. Those are the kids who don't idolize mental illness anymore. I was a model as a teen and I stopped after I didn't get a job cause I didn't weigh in at what they wanted and the man told me I can run to the bathroom RQ if I really want the role. I was young and naive so I wasn't fully catching on and the lady next to him was like vomit sweetie. Go push up those pounds. It's disgusting knowing that we push eating disorders and body issues on anyone but especially younger developing teens. Before then I was in the modeling gig for a while and I always hated it but my mom wouldn't let me out until it got obviously bad enough for her to see. It's apparently all in the agent that represents you and your family support group. I'm acquainted with a woman who has been modeling since her teens, she's now early 30s. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, does not drink, smoke, or use any drugs, has never appeared any nuder than bikini pictures, and she has rejected wearing too skimpy ones. She's squeaky clean. From my vantage point it's because her parents supported and mentored her, and looked long and hard for an agent who would do the same. She's likely an exception, though. I think female models, actresses, musicians, dancers, etc. have a rough time in the industry very often. I also got to know a beautiful girl who was late 20s or early 30s when we met, blonde and long bones. She was successful and made good money though I had never heard of her. Maybe she did bridal or catalog or something but wow she was so pretty. She was married and everything, must have started younger, she seemed healthy and well balanced. I was impressed. Then again, I also met a genuinely famous model in a recovery support group. She had been a VS Angel in the 90s and a very famous runway model. Her cocaine story blew my mind. At 5 feet 9 inches she said she was down to a scary weight like maybe 90 pounds or something, from cocaine, and it was really effed up. So yeah, goes both ways. Maybe the nature of the person is a big part, who knows. Glamorizing crime, selling drugs, and screwing people over. I've met so many poor ass people who act like hard asses because they break the law all the time. They call it hustling or whatever. Gotta make bank. They listen to rap music about drugs and crime all the time and literally brag about getting in fights, ripping off other drug dealers, or brag about being the plug, when in reality they're just some crappy street dealer. They all think they're John Gotti or Tony Montana and it's their entire personality. Meanwhile they get arrested all the time because they do dumb shit all the time and think that somehow makes them more badass. Yes, being poor is rough, but there are more ways to make a living than just being a full-time scumbag criminal. I know, it's totally okay because they are public figures or whatever. Because they deserve it. Because they are also somehow supporting harassment, so they're fair game. However you go about justifying your own harassment towards them, fine, just don't deny what you're actually doing and call it something different. It's harassment. I know firsthand that feeling. I used to be a part of them. I know how easy it is to deny being the bully, because I considered myself in the benevolent ideology. I was just fighting back. Yeah no, fighting back, despite having never even been spoken to by my target. Fighting back against offenses that I've extrapolated through logical association fallacies, metaphorical interpretation, or just off the wayward insistence of some sharp-tongued rando with more followers than me. I was in that position. And here on Reddit, I can say with confidence that a lot of you are, too, but haven't realized it yet. Heck, I didn't realize it for a while. I was lucky, though. I was lucky in that this behavior wasn't glamorized back when I did it. Nothing on the internet was really glamorized. Biggest internet event of the time was the something awful Photoshop Friday, or a Maddox article dropping 8 weeks late. The internet equivalent of Marvel movies was when Newgrounds would post the latest stick death animation. The internet was very humble. It knew it was a mere fledgling, and kinda sucked. Taking the internet seriously was met with bemused derision. Nobody was going to be changing the world on the internet back then. Before TikTok, before Facebook, before even MySpace was a household name, people argued on the internet just for their own entertainment. If somebody went through incredible efforts to source and support a political stance and went into tremendous detail, their opponent could laugh at their text wall, ridicule them all like, "Wow, you need to get a life, this is just the internet my dude," and everyone else would join in contemptuous sneers because some pompous dolt made a sincere effort winning an internet argument. Nowadays though, it's impossible to check every single enraged internet mob. There's too many of them. Social engagement algorithms have made the internet mob in vogue, and rewards them with exposure and influence. I see red flags all over the place, controversies manufactured in ways I used to concoct when I was a teenager, but they go unchecked with unwavering credibility. They're not orchestrated by a dozen bored kids in a chat room, it's an entire interconnected culture numbering in the several thousand. They don't annoy policy admins, they cut right into people's personal lives, getting them doxxed, threatened, and hurt. Sigh. I sometimes miss the whole "look at this loser, arguing on the internet" mentality. It was childish, dismissive, counterintuitive to the pursuit of greater thought, but I'll be damned if it didn't keep the peace. Many times I'll be writing a response here on Reddit, and the early 2000s internet culture would come back, mocking me for trying to change somebody's worldview in a direct confrontation. And sometimes, it'll prevail, where I just delete my response and walk away. Let people figure themselves out. People are complicated, and translating people's thoughts into words even more so. People will make bad takes, they'll say dumb things, they'll unintentionally spout out some rather egregious nonsense without a shred of hate intended. People will inevitably grow like I have, learn some patience, charity, and nuance. They'll learn how extremely toxic it is to always assume the worst about others, and make every possible transgression some populist fight against the enemy. Everyone grows out of that phase. But nowadays, the glamorization of it will definitely postpone such maturation. Because I'll be arsed if it doesn't net those precious Mine is oddly specific. Recently in social media, specifically TikTok, there has been an uptick in people talking about having ADHD and making videos about symptoms to look for, and a lot of people doing reaction videos saying they think they have ADHD. I actually have no problem with any of this. The thing people are now glamorizing and is actually extremely toxic is the call-out culture that forms around trends like this. People eventually come out of the woodwork saying that now everybody thinks they have ADHD and it is bullshit and ruining everything and hurting people and blah blah blah. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was in my 30s. I didn't know how far-reaching ADHD symptoms were. I thought it was only something kids had. I struggled my whole life and thought I was lazy and stupid. I felt like I would be trying twice as hard as people and never could catch up. I don't care if 10,000 people think they have ADHD and don't. If a TikTok trend is the difference between one person seeking help and getting diagnosed and healing from their lifetime of suffering, then I'm all for the trend. People getting mad about it are restigmatizing it, and it will stop people from seek help when they actually need it. It isn't cool, or woke, or kind to scare people away from seeking help if they I don't know, man. I have BPD, and people in our community generally fall into two categories. OMG, look at me, I have BPD and unhealthy coping mechanisms. I blame everything on the disorder. Let's smoke some weed. People who want to get better for themselves and the people around them. Of course, the people who have unhealthy coping mechanisms also want to get better, but there's a difference between being ashamed of using an unhealthy coping mechanism and shoving it in people's faces, as in, I have issued, I'm allowed to do this at your expense and never change. BPD is difficult in that it's a personality disorder, and thanks to that, we don't really tend to have a sense of identity, so we take anything in our grasp and make it that. The first category either only wants their diagnosis to let them do basically whatever the heck they want, or want the label to be able to incorporate it into their non-existent sense of identity and are scared of losing it, so they don't actually want progress in treatment. That being said, I'm reconsidering even being part of such communities, since a lot of problematic behavior is enabled in the name of the disorder. The medical industry. The U.S. healthcare system contributes significantly to countrywide air and water pollution, and hence, to pollution-related health damages. U.S. healthcare activities were responsible for 9% to 10% of national greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions in 2013. We projected that annual greenhouse gas emissions associated with healthcare in the United States would cause annually 123,000 to 381,000 disability-adjusted life years in future health damages. Furthermore, non-GHG healthcare-associated emissions contribute to acid rain, 12% of the national total, photochemical smog, 10%, and respiratory disease, 9%. Public health damages from exposure to non-GHG emissions were subsequently estimated at 405,000 disability-adjusted life years, Dallas, annually.